Hello and welcome to today's ASMR video. Today we'll be looking at some models that I painted for Games Workshop's Warhammer games. Now, if you don't know what ASMR is, it's a form of relaxation video that you can find out more about on Google. And if you don't know what Warhammer is, it's a series of tactical board games and war games played using miniatures, which are usually made of plastic and are assembled and painted by people who are interested in the hobby. Let's take a look at the first model I'll be showing you today. So, this is a Wrath of Khorne bloodthirster, and it's an avatar of the blood god Khorne. So, Khorne is the oldest and most powerful of all the Chaos gods, of which there are 4. And Khorne is the god of bloodshed, wrath, carnage, and murder. There are 3 different types of bloodthirster that can be built by the kit, and this is, in my view, the most powerful version. You can see it has powerful wings which allow it to fly into battle, a mighty axe, a flail, and a crown which protects it from enemy sorcery. You can assemble this model in 2 ways, and I've chosen to assemble it flying above some flames. You can also choose to assemble it running across the ground. Now I'll do some light dusting of the model with a paintbrush while I talk. So, Khorne is probably the most popular of all the Chaos gods, and is probably played the most in the game. It's quite a simple army to use because it's all about attacking. Now, for a long time I resented Khorne and didn't like playing with Khorne models, even though the first Chaos champion I owned was dedicated to the god Khorne. This is mainly because my favourite of the Chaos gods, who we'll come to later, is Slanish, the god of excess, and Slanish and Khorne are bitter, immortal enemies. You can see every part of the model is geared for battle. Even the flail has a punch dagger around the knuckles, and the axe is bedecked with skulls. Skulls are a motif of Khorne, and Khorne's icon is the skull icon, the stylized symbol on the top of the crown, which actually broke when I was assembling it, and I've had to do a little bit of fixing, which means the icon isn't perfect, but it'll do from a distance. So this was the first Greater Demon that I painted this year as a lockdown project. We're currently on our third coronavirus lockdown in the UK, and I wanted some big challenges for my painting that would take up time. So it seemed like painting the 4 Greater Demons of the 4 Chaos Powers was the way to go. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at this model. Let's take a look at the second one. So this is a great unclean one, and it's an avatar of the plague god Nurgle. Nurgle is the most disgusting of the 4 chaos gods. He revels in corruption, disease, despair, although his followers sometimes have a jolly feeling about them. You can see he's got a morbid grin on his face. And this model is bedecked with 1, 2, 3 Nurglings, which are little attendants who serve the Great Unclean One as a miniature version of himself. So I've equipped this Great Unclean One, and there are a number of options in the box set, with a plague flail and a huge filth-encrusted sword. I painted this with some Games Workshop effect paints. Nurgle's Rot on the blade, which is the green sheen, and Nihilak Oxide on the inset area of Intaglio, which is the corroding effect of the copper. You really wouldn't like to be hit by this sword. In fact, it can possibly give you tetanus just by looking at it. So Nurgle is sometimes the most powerful of the Chaos Gods, because his power waxes and wanes as plagues do, and sometimes he's the weakest of the Chaos Gods. You can see this model has its guts literally hanging out, and it was great fun painting them, as well as all the pustules and boils that cover the model. There are open sores which look very painful, although Nurgle would rejoice in pain, and a cursory long cloth covering his fat bum. The rolls of fat that bedeck the model actually made it very easy to paint. And this is probably the best looking of all the 4 models we're going to look at today, but it was also the easiest to paint. I really had fun painting it. Now Nurgle is the patron god in the science fiction game Warhammer 40,000 of the Death Guard Legion, the Khorne model we looked at previously, his god is the patron god of the World Eaters Legion. So that is Grandfather Nurgle, the Great Unclean One. Let's take a look at the third model I painted during lockdown. So, the third Greater Demon is a servant of the avatar of Tzeentch, who is the second most powerful of the Chaos Gods, and the patron of the Thousand Suns Legion of Chaos Space Marines in the science fiction game Warhammer 40,000. I struggled at first with this model, but I think it really came together at the end with the colours on the wings. Now, this model's paint job was partly inspired by a army I remember fondly, or a warband rather, from one of my first White Dwarfs, which is the magazine for Games Workshop. That was White Dwarf number 135, and it came out in March 1991, so it's 30 years old almost at the time of recording this video. That White Dwarf had a warband in that was heavily converted and was a warband in service to Tzeentch. The warband was coloured purple, red and yellow, and it was the inspiration for the colours I chose on this model, which is usually painted in blue tones. I'm really very pleased with how this model turned out. I think it is the most eye-catching of all the models I painted, if not the best. That honour probably belongs to the Great Unclean One, who is a mortal enemy of Tzeentch and the Lords of Change. So Tzeentch is the Chaos God of fate. He is a cruel trickster god, fond of deception and manipulation, and he is also the patron god of magic and change. His servants warp and weave and are wreathed in sorcerous flames. I quite like Tzeentch. He's probably my second favourite of the Chaos Gods. My favourite is the model we'll be looking at last of all. And we'll look at that model in a few moments. So the Lord of Change is obviously avian in nature. It's like a great big vulture or a parrot. things I like the most about this model is it has a range of head options. The one I've chosen has 3 eyes on one side of the head and 3 eyes on the other side of the head. I like how crazy that is. I've equipped the model with a Rod of Sorcery, which allows it to take missile actions in the game Age of Sigmar, and a Staff of Change, which is the standard equipment for a Lord of Change. Let's take a look at our 4th and final model. So this is a Keeper of Secrets, and it is an avatar of the Chaos God Slanish, who is the non-binary god of excess, possibly hermaphroditic. So Slanish is my absolute favourite of all the Chaos Gods. I have a Slanish Emperor's Children army for Warhammer 40,000. That is the legion of Chaos Space Marines that serve the Chaos God Slanish. I also have, well, I haven't yet pre-ordered, but I'm looking forward to pre-ordering the new releases for the Hedonites of Slanish in the Age of Sigmar fantasy game, which should be pre-ordering, or up for pre-order, next week at the time of recording this video, although that hasn't been confirmed yet. So the Keeper of Secrets is a lithe and supple killer. It's got 1, 2 deadly claws with which it slashes and rends at its enemies. It's got a sinistrous hand, which is sinister in more than one meaning, since it is its left hand and it is wreathed in mystery. And it has, I think, a Wit Stealer sword. Very elegant. Now the model has a underskirt and an overcape, and originally when I assembled it I glued everything together, but then I realized it would be pretty much impossible to paint, so I took the cape off the model and painted that separately before gluing it back on when the model was finished. This was by far the hardest model of all the Greater Demons to paint. The large, smooth areas of skin are quite unforgiving and need subtle blends and highlights. I was helped in painting this model by a video from the Duncan Rhodes Painting Academy, which told me which paints to use, although I deviated slightly from the paints recommended and went for a pink underskirt and top knot rather than the wine colour which was recommended. So, as I mentioned earlier, Slanish is the Chaos God of Excess. They are also the Chaos God of Pain and Pleasure. Everything about Slanish is heightened, taken to the most extreme limit. They are the most charismatic of all the Chaos Gods, and also the weakest, but this is partly because Slanish is the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and their power is growing more and more as they steal the champions of other gods. So this model is bedecked in jewels, and filigree, fine leather. Really is a delight now it's painted, but I struggled whilst I was painting it to get everything just right. I didn't give up, I stuck with it. I think the end result is rather beautiful. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. As always, likes, comments, and subscribes are gratefully appreciated. Until my next video, I wish you gentle relaxation, pleasant dreams, and restful sleep. Goodbye.